Good evening, my name is Carrie Lynn, and I'm going to be the second negative speaker tonight. I will be presenting first some workability arguments, and secondly, some disadvantages. There are three main workability problems that I see in the affirmatives case. The first of which has to do with compliance. They are under the assumption that using the drug marijuana for medical purposes after being prescribed will only be done in the manner that physicians prescribe. This is not the case, as the American Psychiatric Association shows that marijuana abuse and dependence are highly prevalent in the United States, and that they affect and impact negatively disorders, and they're associated with marijuana withdrawal, unemployment, personality dysfunction, crime, respiratory problems, and other psychiatric disorders. My second workability argument has to do with the influence that politics has on social life. An article citing medical marijuana and medical use, abuse, and dependence statistics states that prior studies on drinking and smoking suggest a direct link between the community approval of and use of substances and policy changes. So this is basically saying that by moving marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, the public will have an increased encouragement to participate in use of the drug, as opposed to the way it is now, where people who actually need it are the only ones who can legally seek it out. A third workability argument I see has to do with my opponent's consistent reference to finances. In the schedule classification, the DEA identifies 5 factors that are determinants in classifying drugs. The first of which has to do with the chemistry being known and reproducible. The second being that there are adequate safety studies. The third, that these studies provide efficacy for medical benefits. Fourth, that those studies are done by qualified experts. And fifth, that scientific evidence is widely available. None of these determinants has to do with the financial benefits or disadvantages that the nation would experience by legalizing or moving marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. They only have to do with the studies and the medical benefits and the abuses associated with such drugs. Based on those standards I just listed, it is clear that the studies providing evidence for benefits from the medical use of marijuana are lacking adequate professional backing and are also lacking adequate efficacy. Finally, I will move into my disadvantage arguments, of which I have 3, possibly 4 if there's time. The first one is that there's a direct negative effect in that moving marijuana to Schedule 3 will expose more people to its known risks, specifically psychoses, as opposed to benefiting them from its potential health alleviance. This is cited from a Livestrong article in which it states that marijuana is a powerful psychoactive drug and can have serious effects on the mind and body outside of its intended use. Psychoactive side effects of using marijuana include hallucination, anxiety, memory loss, and confusion. Later in the article, Dr. Stanley of The Lancet finds that there's strong significant relationship between marijuana use and the increased risk of psychosis, including severe anxiety, depression, and suicidal tendencies. To me, these do not seem like benefits from taking a drug in return intending to alleviate nausea or other soreness or pain. Secondly, there are indirect effects from moving the schedule. The first is clear as currently we can see that it is already abused, as I stated earlier. And secondly, in that contemporary potency of marijuana plants are difficult to measure and cause adverse though sometimes these short-term effects are lasting. This is cited by the newer medicalized programs in a comparative study between older marijuana studies and current ones today, in which they show that there is strong evidence suggesting that marijuana-induced psychosis can persist for days or weeks beyond the initial period of intoxication, especially for strains with high potency. Such encounters can lead to physical dependence and clinical addiction, which happens in many users, especially frequent users. And finally, I will cite the American Medical Association's response to the assumption that therapeutic benefits from the use of marijuana are derived from THC and not other products of consumption. There needs to be a distinction made between smoking marijuana and taking it in a measurable dose, such as through the drugs that my colleague mentioned earlier. Doctors from the AMA suggest that inhalation of burnt marijuana may have inherent health risks, while the benefits that my opponents name are only potential benefits and are side effects. With that, I thank you.